The skies above Earth split open like a theater curtain being yanked off stage by an overdramatic director. It was 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. People in Tokyo glanced up from their vending machine ramen. Londoners paused mid-grumble. New Yorkers, already unimpressed by anything that didn't involve traffic or crime, took out their phones. And somewhere in Iowa, a farmer muttered, "Well, damn," and kept milking his cow. Above them, an armada of shimmering obsidian ships decloaked with the subtlety of a rock concert on fire. A deep, resonant tone vibrated through the air like a didgeridoo made of anxiety. Holograms the size of mountains projected across the globe, and from them emerged a single word, translated in every tongue, even the forgotten ones: humanity. In Paris, pigeons scattered. In Cairo, a street vendor didn't blink, flipped his falafel and said, "Took them long enough." And in Geneva, where the UN had just convened to discuss climate emergencies, resource shortages, and the latest celebrity scandal, the room fell into silence. Lights flickered, and a single figure shimmered into being in the middle of the council floor, floating, glowing, radiating cosmic superiority. He had 6 arms, 3 glowing eyes, and a face sculpted like it had never known the word smile. His voice was deep enough to cause minor kidney discomfort in nearby diplomats. "I am Commander Vlox," he declared, "envoy of the Galactic Protection Council. You are in danger." Pause for dramatic effect. Jake leaned over to the intern next to him and whispered, "Bet he practices that in the mirror." Vlox continued, unbothered by the snickers. "We bring protection. We offer sanctuary. The Androni's swarm devours worlds. You are not ready, but we are." Murmurs of unease filled the room. Cameras flashed, social media exploded, and still, Jake, mid-level liaison from Earth's External Affairs Division, just looked bored. He raised a hand. "Quick question." Vlox blinked, all 3 eyes. "Yes. Earthling? Who exactly authorized this, grand entrance? Because I'm looking at your GPC public-facing protocols," Jake said, tapping a tablet, "and it says you're supposed to send a first contact peace delegation, not an interstellar flash mob." There was a beat of silence. Vlox shifted. "We deemed it necessary to make an impression." Jake nodded. "Right, well, consider us very impressed, also confused." He stood up. "See, you mentioned the Andronis. Big scary swarm, eats planets. That's adorable. We watched a documentary about it. My niece cried. But, and this is the key thing here, they've never actually come anywhere near our sector. So, real talk, what are we actually being protected from?" The council chamber blinked in confusion. Vlox straightened, clearly used to less backtalk. "We monitor galactic threats beyond your perception. The Andronis are but one." Jake pulled up a hologram with a flourish. "Right. So I dug a little into your threat reports. See this?" He pointed to a glowing heat map of the galaxy. "The last 3 Androni sightings were in Quadrant Rho, 150 parsecs away. That's like threatening someone in New York because there's a bear in Alaska." Someone in the back chuckled. Vlox glared. "But," the commander tried. Jake held up a finger. "Hang on, it gets better." With a swipe, he pulled up another projection, an organizational flowchart. At the top was the GPC emblem. Below that, subcommittees, defense contractors, regional taxation systems, and a suspicious number of shell corporations. "This is your internal structure," Jake said. "Nice pyramid. I'm seeing 18 overlapping jurisdictions, 3 defense manufacturers funneling credits through consulting firms, and this," he tapped a blinking node, "is the Androni's Threat Assessment Division, run by your cousin, Vlox. Care to comment?" Vlox opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "Earthling, you misunderstand." No, Jake said, walking toward the center with all the swagger of a man who once negotiated a ceasefire between 2 nations over a shared love of pizza toppings. "I think I get it. You create panic, you sell protection, and when the panic dies down, you expand to the next system. It's a galactic insurance scam." A dozen ambassadors gasped. The Martian diplomat laughed so hard he dropped his translator orb. Vlock's voice rose, trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. We have safeguarded hundreds of species. We prevented the fall of 3 empires. And how many of those empires paid you before the danger arrived? Jake asked. How many threats did you neutralize before they even showed up, because they were never real to begin with? Silence again. Jake turned to the cameras, now broadcasting live across Earth and, unintentionally, half the galaxy. Look, he said, we appreciate the concern. Really. But humanity's survived ice ages, plagues, climate collapse, nuclear brinkmanship, and 3 Taylor Swift rebrands. You show up in your big shiny ships, and we're supposed to cower? Number, we've watched enough movies to know how this ends. He smiled. We're the species that keeps fighting even after the credits roll. A slow, awkward clap echoed from the back. The delegate from Vega 12 joined in. Then the Arxen ambassador. Then Earth's own diplomats. Vlox stood frozen, the glowing light around him dimming just slightly. I will report this response to the council, he hissed. Jake shrugged. Cool. Be sure to send them the customer satisfaction survey too. I added a new section called Galactic Extortion Tactics. The alien disappeared in a flicker of static. Silence fell again. Then Jake sat down, looked around and muttered, Anyone else want waffles? By the time Commander Vlock's image disintegrated into the ether like a dropped Wi-Fi signal, half the galaxy was already watching reruns of the encounter. Clips of Jake's sarcastic mic drop circulated across the holonet like a swarm of caffeinated hornets. The line, "We're the species that keeps fighting even after the credits roll," was now etched onto t-shirts, memes, protest signs, and at least one forehead tattoo on a Saturnian influencer named Drexiplex. The Galactic Protection Council wasn't just embarrassed, they were hemorrhaging credibility. The human incident, as the bureaucrats now called it, had opened a galactic can of worms no amount of space PR could duct tape shut. And Jake? Jake was being summoned to Washington, D.C., with all the urgency of a man who'd just punched a demigod in the face and been congratulated for his left hook. He landed at Reagan Interstellar Terminal and was immediately whisked away by a black SUV driven by a woman who hadn't blinked once in 30 minutes. She dropped him off at the Pentagon with the gentle shove of someone who'd been trained to kill with her eyelashes. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, which made sense. The Galactic Protection Council was a bureaucratic juggernaut known for retaliating with paperwork thicker than neutron stars and protective demonstrations that often looked suspiciously like planetary sieges. And Jake had just embarrassed them, live, in high definition, with subtitles. Room 47C, said the receptionist, pointing toward a steel-reinforced elevator. They're waiting. Can I at least grab a snack first? Jake asked. She didn't answer. The elevator opened before he finished the sentence. Room 47C looked like someone had held a tech convention inside a Cold War bunker. Screens covered every inch of wall, looping footage of alien warships, GPC drone footage, and Jake's face in various unflattering angles. At the center of it all sat General Eliza Trent, silver hair, titanium jawline, and eyes that suggested she hadn't slept since the moon landing. You're late, she said. I stopped to admire my own press coverage, Jake replied, sliding into a chair. Turns out I'm a galactic icon now. Still no fan club, though. Kinda disappointing. Trent didn't smile. She gestured to the others in the room, representatives from NASA, the CIA, a few guys who looked like they were invented by conspiracy theorists, and, surprisingly, a teenage girl in a hoodie labeled DARPA intern. Trent cut straight to it. You humiliated the most powerful interstellar agency in existence. Jake grinned. You're welcome. They might retaliate, she continued, with lawyers or lasers, possibly both. Tell them to take a number, Jake said. Earth's been threatened by scarier things, like diet soda bans. The DARPA intern stifled a laugh. Trent didn't. Here's the issue, she said, tapping the table. A hologram of the Milky Way spun into the air, with multiple red X's popping up across sectors. Since your little outburst, 17 other species have contacted us. Jake raised an eyebrow. With fan mail? Requests, Trent said. They want us to explain how we figured out the GPC's scam. Some are asking for consulting. A few want protection. From the protection. Oh, Jake said. So I accidentally started an intergalactic rebellion. Neat. You exposed them. Now they're vulnerable, and they're blaming us. Jake leaned back. Let me guess. You want me to clean up the mess I made? Trent's eyes narrowed. You're going to help us rewrite the rules. 2 hours later, Jake found himself standing in front of Earth's first interstellar response team. The name was still pending. Some favored EarthCom, others liked Galactic OPS. Jake preferred Team Petty, but no one asked him. They were a strange mix. Scientists, diplomats, hackers, a Scottish AI with emotional issues, and one man who claimed to have wrestled a xeno-mercenary with a spoon. They were all smart, they were all chaotic, and they were all human to the core. Jake clapped his hands. All right, folks, let's recap. He flicked up a hologram of the GPC's public services menu. These guys, he said, pointing, are essentially cosmic mafia in business casual capes. They start fires and sell water. They're bloated, corrupt, and allergic to being questioned. A scientist raised her hand. So what's the plan? Jake smiled. We do what humans do best. We build an open-source alternative. Think Galactic Reddit meets UN peacekeeping, with less war crimes. There was a beat of silence. Then someone whispered, That's insanely ambitious. Jake nodded. Exactly, which is why it'll work. Meanwhile, in Sector 14, deep in the heart of GPC territory, Commander Vlox was not having a good day. His office now contained 12 unread subpoenas, 4 urgent reputation recovery memos, and 1 stress relief orb that had been cracked in half during a rage-induced telekinetic outburst. The footage of Earth's rebuttal had gone viral on every data stream. Even the Morlock symbiotes were memeing it. Someone had edited Vlock's face onto a crying toddler surrounded by waffles. He needed a win, desperately, and that's when the comm link buzzed. Sir, said his assistant, we just received intel. Earth is assembling a response coalition, something called the Human-Centric Interstellar Initiative. Vlock squinted. A what? The assistant gulped. They're offering protection, for free. Silence. Then Vlox whispered something that hadn't left his mouth in over a decade. Oh no. Commander Vlox had never once experienced a brand crisis. Until now. He paced inside his obsidian office atop the GPC central spire, claws twitching, tail lashing, and 3 holoscreens blinking, mimetic threat level, catastrophic, in increasingly bold red fonts. Earth, he growled. The unregistered backwater swamp of caffeinated mammals. His aide, a jittery species resembling a humanoid gecko in a business suit, tried to keep up. They've rolled out something they're calling Open Defend, sir. It's a decentralized security protocol. What does that mean in non-nerd language? Vlox snapped. The aide gulped. It means anyone, anywhere in the galaxy, can now access free early warning AI systems, tactical planning tools, and defensive drone schematics. All open source, no royalties. Humans uploaded everything. Vlox froze. Everything? Even memes, the aide whispered. Vlox screamed into the nearest potted plant. Back on Earth, Jake was on a roll. The Human-Centric Interstellar Initiative, HCII, had gone from a coffee-stained napkin idea to a fully functioning galactic defense and consultancy network in just 12 days. Why? Because humans didn't wait for permission. Within hours of going public, rogue programmers in Berlin, engineers in Mumbai, farmers in Argentina, and one extremely enthusiastic Star Trek fan from Nebraska had joined the fray. Defense simulations were being run in Discord servers. Alien distress calls were handled via Reddit threads. Tactical training manuals were translated into 380 languages, plus 5 dialects of whale song, just in case. Jake stood in the HC2 command hub, an ex-Mall turned interstellar think tank, addressing a growing crowd of both humans and aliens. We're not here to rule, he said. We're not here to replace the GPC. A beat. We're here because someone needs to hand the galaxy a flashlight and say, you don't have to be scared anymore. Applause erupted. Even the former GPC defector, Grintex, a cybernetic arachnid diplomat, clapped with 3 of his 8 limbs. Then came the moment that changed everything. A shrill alarm echoed from the command center. The room went still. The technician, a teenager from Brazil with a headset held together by duct tape, looked up from the console. "We've got a live call." "Location?" Jake asked. The kid gulped. "Xeron 4th Mid-Rim Colony, under siege." "By the Andrones?" someone asked. Jake's smile vanished. "Number worse." He tapped the interface. "By the GPC." On the rocky plains of Xeron 4, the sky bled red and blue with energy discharges. GPC intervention fleets hovered above the cities, descending in silent, terrifying columns of armored exosuits and glowing stun cannons. Broadcasts declared martial law. Civilians were being herded, for their own safety, into containment sectors. Jake stared at the live feed. "Classic authoritarian backpedal," he muttered. "Can't control the narrative, so they force one." "Should we call for help?" someone asked. Jake cracked his knuckles. "Nah, we'll give 'em the full package." Within 30 minutes, the Open Defend network lit up. Veteran pilots from Earth's moon colonies ran flight sims with Xeron's militia. HCII's remote drones dropped shield projectors across the city. Human medics coached Xeronian volunteers through triage over voice channels. And from the stratosphere, Earth's first independent starship, the Waffle Iron, decloaked and began jamming the GPC's tactical uplinks. Jake stood on the ship's bridge, sipping coffee. "Status?" "GPC's lead ship just lost control of its exosuit network," the AI replied. "Also, someone replaced their internal comms with Rick Astley's entire discography." Jake grinned. "Never gonna give you up, baby." On Xeron 4, the tide turned in under 4 hours. What started as an orderly intervention became a full-blown embarrassment for the GPC. Their ships were outmaneuvered by Xeronian cargo haulers. Their infantry suits walked in circles. A giant inflatable duck was somehow hovering over their flagship. The final blow came when a group of human gamers on Twitch figured out how to hack the GPC command codes using only a Raspberry Pi and spite. Back in the GPC war room, Commander Vlox watched in horror as his fleet surrendered. Not because they were outgunned, because they were out-hacked. By Earth. Again. The aftermath rippled through the galaxy like a dropped bassline at an alien rave. Species long intimidated into GPC compliance began asking questions. Some refused payments. Others began requesting help, not from the Council, but from humanity. Suddenly, Earth became more than a rogue planet. It became a symbol, a species that didn't ask for protection, didn't kneel to bureaucracy, didn't wait to be saved. They built the lifeboat and threw a rope to everyone else. In the HCII hub, Jake scrolled through an endless stream of messages. Thank yous, alliance requests, memes of Vlox's face photoshopped onto a crying baby riding a space cow. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Was this your plan all along?" asked Grintex, scuttling beside him. Jake looked thoughtful. "I just don't like bullies." "And what happens when the Council retaliates?" Jake's smile returned, sharp and amused. "They already did. And they lost. To memes, gamers, and open-source nerds. You think they're ready for what we do when we actually try?" Grintex chittered nervously. Jake stood. "Tell the crew to prep the Waffle Iron. We're taking a little tour." "To where?" Jake winked. "Wherever someone says, humans can't help." The Waffle Iron sliced through hyperspace with the enthusiasm of a caffeine-fueled intern on their first day. Inside its bridge, built from reclaimed parts of old space shuttles, espresso machines, and at least one PlayStation 6, Jake leaned against the command console, sipping from a metal thermos labeled "Emergency Tea, may contain whiskey." "Status report?" he asked. The ship's AI, affectionately nicknamed Martha, responded with her signature dry tone. "We're 27 minutes from the Junari system. The distress signal originated from a mining colony orbiting Junari Prime. GPC scouts are already in orbit." "Let me guess," Jake said, tapping his temple. They're there for security purposes and temporary governance restabilization, right? Martha sighed. Their broadcast reads, Operation Gentle Claw. Jake rolled his eyes. That's the same name they used when they accidentally erased an ocean. Correction, Martha said. They claimed the ocean left voluntarily. Jake smirked. Time to get involved, then. Behind him, a crew of volunteers, human and alien alike, was already strapping into makeshift jump seats. There was May, the tactical genius with a degree in both diplomacy and sarcasm. Tox, a Trillin brute with a heart of gold and a vocabulary of 5 words. And Rami, a Ukrainian mechanic who could jury-rig a tractor beam out of duct tape and resentment. Let's knock, Jake said, flipping a lever. Junari Prime was a battered, storm-racked world with just enough atmosphere to ruin your vacation, but not enough to support breathable air. Its only value lay in the mineral-rich crust, a crust that miners had clawed at for generations, barely surviving under corporate and interstellar contracts written in more languages than were legally ethical. And now, the GPC had arrived under the pretense of stabilization. Their ships floated like vultures above the colony. Loudspeakers blared instructions in Galactic Standard. Remain calm. All assets are now under GPC jurisdiction. Translation. Your stuff is ours now. You're welcome. Jake's team docked on the blind side of an abandoned comms tower. They exited the ship in patched-together suits decorated with everything from smiley-face stickers to glowing slogans like "Nerf this" and "Property of no one." Stealth mode? May asked. Jake grinned under his helmet. Nah, let's give them the full human welcome. They walked through the dust storm, straight into the middle of the colony's square, where a GPC administrator, an overly perfumed insectoid named Yeltrax, was lecturing terrified miners about galactic order. Jake tapped him on the thorax. Excuse me, he said. Your presentation sucks. Yeltrax turned. His 6 eyes blinked independently. Who authorized? Jake held up a badge. It read, Human Interstellar Regulatory Agency, acronym HIRA, totally fake. I'm here to perform a surprise audit, Jake added. You're about 6 violations deep, and I've barely sniffed the air. Yeltrax sputtered. There's no such agency. May held up a holopad. There is now. We launched the website 12 hours ago. Already has better reviews than you. From behind, Tox growled. Jake leaned in, his voice dropping. You might want to back off before the miners decide they don't need you. Yeltrax glanced around. The miners were standing up now. Someone had handed out pipe tools. Someone else had passed around a banner that read, Freedom first, miner second. The GPC administrator calculated, flinched, and called for retreat. As the last of the GPC ships peeled off into orbit, the miners erupted in cheers. Jake stood still, letting the dust whip around him. This, he said, is how it starts. Within a week, 6 more colonies reached out. HCII's network exploded. Human-led support teams began operating in dozens of systems. Engineers repaired failing infrastructure with nothing but chewing gum and 3D printers. Diplomats negotiated ceasefires between feuding species by referencing reality TV plotlines. A human saxophonist even brokered a trade agreement using only jazz improvisation. The galaxy wasn't just watching anymore. They were choosing sides, and the side that fought with jokes, duct tape, and open-source warfare was winning. Meanwhile, Jake reviewed intercepted GPC communications in the war room aboard the Waffle Iron. Trent's voice crackled over the secure channel. They're losing grip. Every failed intervention you disrupt makes them look weaker. But there's a problem. Jake raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Vlox? Worse, she said. The High Table. Jake stiffened. The Galactic High Table wasn't some ceremonial council. They were the unseen financiers, influencers, and ancient powers behind the GPC. The kind of beings who didn't make threats. They erased timelines. They just issued a statement, Trent said grimly. It wasn't in words. It was a quantum signature that translated into cease or be unmade. Jake leaned back. Classy. What's your move? Jake's grin returned. I'm going to invite them to Earth. Your what? Jake cut the feed. Exactly 3 days later, the most powerful entities in the galaxy, masked, veiled, or entirely composed of mathematical energy, arrived on Earth. Their crafts didn't land. They manifested, unfolding from space like ideas being spoken aloud. The designated meeting place? A folding table outside a Waffle House in Nebraska. Jake sat on one side in a hoodie that read, "My other ship is your mom." On the other side, the high table's envoy, a floating cube of sentient crystal logic, hovered silently. Jake took a bite of hash browns. "You wanted to meet?" he said, mouth full. "Here we are." The cube pulsed. "Your actions destabilize ancient systems." Jake wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Good. Some systems need toppling." "You threaten cosmic balance." Jake pointed at the waitress. "She works 2 jobs, raises 3 kids, and still finds time to be kind to drunk tourists at 2 a.m. She doesn't need protection. She is protection." Silence. Then the cube spoke again. "What do you want?" Jake leaned forward. "Equality, access, freedom to choose, and waffles." The cube processed. "We will consider." Jake nodded. "Take your time, but understand something. Humans, we don't kneel. We negotiate with grit and breakfast food." The cube vanished, and Jake, as always, smiled. The galaxy wasn't burning, but it was definitely sizzling. By the time the high table withdrew its surveillance nodes from Earth's orbit, word had spread faster than warp-speed gossip at a Terran barbershop. Humanity, the so-called primitive species, had gone from galactic footnote to front-page scandal. Again. Jake found himself standing on a raised platform at the Nexus Diplomatic Summit, surrounded by a crowd of thousands, ambassadors, representatives, journalists, and a few shady vendors trying to sell bootleg human merchandise. My planet got protected, and all I got was this lousy, singularity-proof vest. He was wearing a wrinkled suit. His hair had rebelled against every attempt at combing. In his hand was a clicker attached to a hologram remote, and behind him, floating mid-air, was a giant glowing graph labeled Galactic Protection Council Approval Rating, a 50-year freefall. He clicked. The graph dropped like a rock into a black hole. "Look," Jake began, casually pacing the stage, "you don't need to be a financial analyst to notice the trend here." Laughter rippled through the crowd, human and alien alike. "What the GPC sold as protection," Jake continued, "was just the oldest scam in the book. Create a threat, offer to defend people from it, take payment, make threats worse, repeat." An Andronis swarm drone exploded behind the next slide. He pointed at it. "This, for instance, is supposedly the most terrifying biological weapon in the galaxy." He paused. "But when we poked it with a frequency-tuned microwave, something we invented trying to fix popcorn, it exploded like a water balloon." More laughter. "We didn't need battleships," Jake said. "We needed curiosity, improvisation, and in the end, just some honesty." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "We don't want to run the galaxy. We don't want to control your planets. But if you come knocking on Earth's door, selling fear in a shiny wrapper, expect us to read the fine print, compare prices, and probably leave a bad review." That earned a standing ovation. Even the Andronis delegation, which had quietly defected from the GPC and now ran a solar-powered meditation retreat, waved their claws in support. After the summit, Jake slipped out through a side corridor and made his way to the balcony. Below him, dozens of diplomats and journalists buzzed around in organized chaos. "You always were good at talking," came a familiar voice. "Trent." She leaned beside him, sipping from a cup of lukewarm star brew. Her hair was shorter now, her jacket lined with new planetary emblems. "You made the high table blink," she said. "That's a first." "They blinked?" Jake smirked. "I thought they pixelated." She rolled her eyes. "You're on at least 12 hit lists now." "Only 12?" He looked genuinely disappointed. A pause. Then she said, "They're not coming back, are they?" Jake shook his head. "They'll try, just not in the same way. Bullies don't quit. They adapt." "Then what now?" Jake grinned. "Now we build something better." Over the next few months, a new coalition formed, the Open Accord. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't quick, but it was honest. Built on transparency, self-defense, and education rather than fear and manipulation, the Accord grew steadily, fueled by human tech, alien cooperation, and the strange phenomenon known as mutual respect. Earth led a small but vital department called reality calibration, essentially a think tank that asked dumb questions until dumb questions revealed brilliant truths. Jake declined a formal leadership role, choosing instead to travel from system to system, offering guidance, sarcastic commentary, and occasionally waffles. At one point, he was invited to return to the GPC, now splintered and desperate, for a reconciliation summit. He brought his own chair. It was a folding lawn chair with a cup holder. When asked what Earth's price was to rejoin the council, he said, "An apology. A real one. And your best engineer. We broke our coffee machine again." They never responded. Years later, on a quiet moon orbiting a gas giant, Jake sat on the hood of an old roamer vehicle, watching the sky shimmer with ion storms. A small girl, blue-skinned, 4 arms, adopted by a human diplomat, sat beside him, kicking her legs off the edge. "Uncle Jake?" "Yeah, kiddo?" "Is it true you saved the galaxy with breakfast food and sarcasm?" Jake laughed. "I'd say sarcasm saved the galaxy. The breakfast food was just to keep the humans from rioting." She giggled. "Can I be a human one day?" He ruffled her hair. "Doesn't matter what you are. Just be the kind of person no scammer wants to meet." She nodded solemnly, pulling her blanket tighter. Above them, stars swirled. Somewhere out there, threats still loomed. Greed still lingered. But Earth, chaotic, unpredictable, occasionally brilliant Earth, had taught the galaxy one thing. Protection isn't something you buy. It's something you build.